It was like any other day, or so I thought. I came home from a walk, feeling the cool breeze of early spring brush against my face. The air smelled fresh, like everything was about to bloom. But when I stepped into the house, my house, the one I built with my own hands, something felt. Nathan was sitting at the kitchen table, his shoulders hunched, his face pale. It wasn't the usual look of concern or exhaustion you get from a hard day at work. No, this was different. This was something darker, something I hadn't seen before. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "this house is haunted." I froze. Haunted? My home? The house I designed? The one I built with every ounce of energy? Every dollar I saved? Every plan my wife and I dreamed up before she passed? Haunted? I laughed. This had to be some kind of joke. "Haunted?" I asked, my voice almost too casual, trying to brush it off. "This house? What, the walls are talking now?" He stood up slowly, a forced calmness in his voice. "It's not just that, Dad. You've got to listen to me. Things are happening here. Strange things. I'm worried about you." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never expected. Greed. He wasn't concerned about my safety. He wasn't worried for me. No, he was after something else. I stepped closer. "Nathan," I said quietly, "you don't really believe that, do you? This house? I built this place from the ground up. There's nothing wrong with it." But the way he shifted in his seat, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, it was all so rehearsed, so calculated. That's when I knew. The realization hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't about ghosts at all. This was about the house. He wanted me to sell. No, he needed me to sell. No, he needed me to sell. I could feel my chest tighten. My own son, my flesh and blood, was trying to manipulate me. The house that was supposed to be my legacy, the house I'd hoped to leave him after I was gone, was suddenly a burden to him, a problem he wanted to get rid of. And why? Because he wanted the money, the inheritance. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I didn't let the shock show on my face. I stayed calm even though my insides were burning with anger. I leaned against the counter, pretending to process his words. "You want me to sell? Is that it?" I asked, my voice steady. He nodded slowly. "Dad, I'm not saying it's all bad, but the house is too big for you. You shouldn't be living here alone. You's not getting any younger." I stared at him, feeling the betrayal burn like acid in my veins. This was it, the moment I realized just how far he was willing to go. This wasn't concern. It was a scheme. He wasn't worried about the house's condition or my safety. He was trying to pressure me into selling it so he could take control of the money. The house I had poured my entire life into was no longer a home. It was a commodity, something for him to claim, and I couldn't believe it. I played along, though. I had to howl. "I said, fine, Nathan. You don't need to worry about me. I said, fine, not selling. Not now. Not ever." His eyes darkened for a moment, just for a moment, before he forced a smile. "Dad, I don't want to see you suffer. You don't have to go through this alone." I kept my gaze fixed on him, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. Suffer? Was he talking about me? Or was he talking about himself? Because right then I realized I wasn't the one suffering. It was him. He was the one who was going to lose. Because he thought he could scare me into giving up what was mine. The house that had been my wife's and mine, the house I had promised myself I'd leave behind as a legacy to my son, was now a target. That night I heard it. It started as a low hum. I couldn't place it at first. I thought it was the wind, maybe the pipes groaning, but then it was louder, a whisper, just a faint sound, almost like someone speaking in a language I couldn't understand. And then the cold, it hit me like a wave, a sudden drop in temperature that made me shiver as I sat in the living room. I didn't want to believe it. I wouldn't believe it. This couldn't be real. I didn't know if the house was really haunted or if it was all in my head, but one thing was clear. Something was wrong. And then it hit me. The cold realization that the haunting wasn't in the house at all. It was in Nathan. The next morning, I found a receipt stuffed under my office papers, a $1,200 charge from an audio store. I had to stop and take a breath. I knew then. The walls weren't whispering at all. He had put something in them. I had to get to the bottom of it, but I wasn't going to be rushed. I wasn't going to give in to the pressure, not yet. I could still hear Nathan's voice in my head, echoing the lies he'd told. It was like a constant hum, distracting me from the truth, making me question myself. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. I wasn't going to let him ruin everything I'd built. The house was mine, and I'd be damned if I'd let it slip away. But one thing was clear. This was more than just a plot to get me to sell. It was a betrayal. A betrayal so deep, so vicious, I couldn't let it slide, and I wasn't about to go down without a fight. This house wasn't just some property. It was my legacy, and no one, not even my son, was going to take it from me. Night after night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house wasn't just creaking, it was groaning. The whispers I'd heard before, they were louder now, more distinct, like voices murmuring just beyond my reach. The cold was unbearable, seeping through the walls and chilling my bones. I wrapped myself in blankets, but it didn't help. It felt like the house was closing in on me. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that the stress of everything was starting to get to me. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Nathan standing there, his face twisted with concern, his words laced with manipulation. "Dad, we need to sell. It's not safe for you here. You need me. More you a to weird too." I could still hear the tone in his voice, the way he made it sound like he was looking out for me, when all along he was setting the stage for his grand scheme. The realization gnawed at me every time I saw him, every time he suggested selling the house. It wasn't about my safety. He didn't care about that. It was about the money, about the house being his. I had always been strong. I'd built this house, worked tirelessly to make it something special. But now I felt myself slipping. Was I losing my mind? Was I truly imagining the whispers, the footsteps in the hallway? Was I really hearing voices from behind the walls? Or was it just the stress getting to me? The house had always been my sanctuary. My wife and I had poured everything into it. Now it felt like a prison. Every night I lay awake, listening to the house whisper, "Sell me, sell me." And the more I heard it, the more I felt like I was losing control. I had to confront it. I had to know the truth. But with every passing day, it became harder to tell if the house was really haunted, or if it was Nathan's manipulation clouding my judgment. The things he said, they weren't just suggestions anymore. They were demands. He'd come over more often, bringing up the same thing, the house. How dangerous it was, how unsafe I was. He'd tell me how I needed to sell, how I'd be better off in a smaller place, a safer place. Every time he came, it felt like he was tightening the noose around me, inch by inch. His voice, his words, they were designed to break me down, to make me doubt my own sanity. "Dad, you've got to understand. He say I sepsem just trying to look out for you. The house is too big for you. It seps too much to handle. You not getting any younger." The words rang in my ears long after he sipped left. And then, one night, it happened again. The cold, the whispers, the sound of footsteps pacing in the hallway. But this time it was different. The whispers were clearer, more insistent. They were calling my name, John. "John, you have to listen." I wanted to dismiss it. I really did. But I couldn't. The fear settled deep in my chest. Cold and suffocating. Was I imagining it? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Or was something darker at work? I couldn't escape it. The house, which had once been my safe haven, now felt like a trap, and I was its prisoner. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows darker, the whispers louder. I began to second-guess everything. Maybe Nathan was right. Maybe I had been too stubborn, too proud to admit that this house was too much for me to handle. Maybe I was losing my grip on reality. And then it hit me, the real horror. What if this wasn't just a haunting? What if it was Nathan himself? What if he was the one behind all of this, trying to drive me mad so he could take the house? The thought chilled me to the bone. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him take everything from me, not my house, not my legacy. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me any longer. I knew I had to find the truth. I had to confront this once and for all. So I began to search. I started with the house itself, room by room, listening carefully to every creak of the floorboards, every odd sound that echoed through the walls. I wasn't going to let Nathan get away with this, but what I found wasn't what I expected. One evening, as I sat in the living room, something caught my eye, an odd reflection in the corner of the room. My heart skipped a beat as I stood and walked closer. There, hidden behind the bookshelf, I found a small speaker. It was expertly hidden, wired into the wall. I couldn't believe it. The whispers, the cold, the strange noises. They weren't from ghosts. They were from him. Nathan had planted speakers in the walls to make it seem like the house was haunted, to scare me into selling. I pulled the speaker out, my hands shaking. The truth hit me like a freight train. My own son had orchestrated this entire thing. The haunting was nothing more than a sick, twisted plot to force me to sell. But now, I had something real. I had evidence. The more I searched, the more I found an invoice for speaker installation, phone records showing Nathan had been in contact with a contractor, and hidden surveillance footage of him setting up the equipment. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was angry. My son had used fear to manipulate me, to break me down, but now the tables were turning. I wasn't the one who was going to be haunted. The betrayal that had been eating away at me was no longer just an emotional wound, it was a war, and now I had the tools to fight back. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The house wasn't haunted. It wasn't some ghost haunting my every step. It was Nathan, my son. He had set this all up to scare me into selling. And now it was time to stop playing the victim. The first thing I did was take a step back. I needed to think, to plan. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me any longer. He thought he had the upper hand, playing me like a puppet, pulling my strings, making me doubt my own mind. But I had something he didn't time, and a mind that could figure out the truth. I hired a private investigator, Brian Maynard. At first he was skeptical. He thought I was just an old man who had lost his grip on reality. But when I explained everything, how my son had been orchestrating this haunting, he took me seriously. Brian started following Nathan, gathering evidence, documenting his every move. Meanwhile, I started combing through the house. I had to know what I was dealing with. Every night, I'd walk through the rooms, listening carefully, looking for anything that felt out of place. I wasn't just going to sit back and let Nathan win. Then, one evening, I found it. It was in the basement, hidden behind a stack of old tools. At first, I thought it was just another oddity, another thing I'd have to explain away. But as I got closer, I could see it. A small black speaker neatly installed into the wall. I didn't need to look any further. It was all starting to fall into place. Nathan had wired the house, planted speakers behind the walls, and had somehow gotten it all to sound like whispers, footsteps. The house was alive. I ripped the speaker out of the wall, my hands shaking with both anger and disbelief. How had I not seen it before? How had he pulled this off without me noticing? But then I remembered the receipt I'd found earlier, the $1,200 invoice. It wasn't just for the speakers, it was for the installation. Nathan had paid someone to set it all up, had paid someone to help him scare me into selling the house. My own son, my flesh and blood. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just let him get away with it, but I needed more. I needed more proof. So I dug deeper. I started looking at the phone records, calls between Nathan and a local contractor. The contractor's name was Greg Daniels. He was the one who installed the speakers. It was all coming together, each piece of the puzzle falling into place. Nathan had used Greg to do the dirty work, knowing I wouldn't suspect him. But I was smarter than that. I contacted Greg, pretending to be a potential client. He was hesitant at first, but I played it cool, acted like I was interested in some audio work for a new house. It didn't take long for him to crack. He confirmed that Nathan had been the one who hired him to install the speakers, to make it seem like the house was haunted. The plan was simple: scare me, break me, and make me sell. I had all the proof I needed. The speaker, the invoice, the phone records, and now Greg's confession. But Nathan didn't know I had it. He thought I was still caught in his web. still unsure of what was real and what wasn't. He was wrong. The plan was taking shape. It was time to turn the tables. I couldn't let him get away with this, not just because he was my son, but because he had tried to take everything from me. He had tried to destroy my legacy, my home, my future. He had used the one thing I trusted the most, my family, to betray me. And now I was going to make him pay for it. The next step was crucial. I couldn't let Nathan know what I knew. He had to think I was still falling for his lies, still considering selling the house. I had to keep playing the role of the confused father, the one who wasn't sure what was real anymore. But every move I made, every word I spoke, would be one step closer to exposing him. I reached out to Sarah. She was the one who had helped me build this place. She knew the ins and outs of the house better than anyone. She was on my side, and I knew she'd help me find the rest of the evidence. She came over the next day, and we started digging into the wiring of the house. Sarah pointed out things I hadn't noticed before, wires that had been tampered with, small holes in the walls where the speakers had been installed. She confirmed what I already knew. Nathan had put the speakers in the walls, had used them to create the illusion of a haunting. But it was more than that. The money Nathan had been spending, the debts that had been piling up, this wasn't just a plot to get me to sell. It was about something bigger. Nathan was drowning in debt, and he thought he could escape it by selling the house. He didn't care about me. He didn't care about anything but getting out of his mess. I wasn't going to let him. I started to prepare. I didn't know exactly how I was going to confront him, but I knew it was coming. I wasn't going to confront him too soon. I had to let him dig his own grave, make him think he was winning. Every time I played into his hands, he got more confident, more brazen. He didn't know I had everything I needed to destroy him. The pieces were all in place. The plan was coming together. And Nathan had no idea what was about to hit him. I had everything in place now. The evidence, the plan, the pieces of Nathan's betrayal scattered across my desk. It felt almost too easy, too quiet, like I was waiting for the storm to come, but that's how I needed it to be. Every step, every move I made had to be precise. I couldn't afford to slip up now. I had to keep playing the part, the confused, trusting father, the one who wasn't quite sure what was happening, the one who seemed on the verge of giving in. Nathan still thought he was winning, that I was buying into his lies, but I knew better. Each time he came over, I kept the conversation casual. And as what for if thinking about it, Nathan? I say, putting on the facade, maybe selling isn't such a bad idea. I could see the relief on his face. It made my skin crawl, the way he smiled like he'd just won, like he was on the verge of getting what he wanted. But what he didn't know was that with every word I spoke, every small concession I made, I was building the trap that would expose him. He kept pushing. I knew you said come around, Dad. It set us for the best. You don't said it want to live in this big old house alone. Each time he spoke, I had to remind myself to stay calm, to not let him see the rage bubbling inside me. Every time he referred to my house as a burden, every time he tried to make me feel like I was a fool for holding on to it, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. This was my legacy, my wife's legacy, and Nathan was trying to destroy it, just for a few more dollars. But I had to play along. I couldn't let him see what I was really planning. I continued to act like I was considering it, but inside I was preparing for the moment when the truth would come out, the moment when Nathan would realize he'd crossed a line he could never come back from. I had to wait for the right moment. I couldn't rush this. Sarah and Brian were on my side, quietly gathering the last pieces of evidence. Brian had been following Nathan, tracking his movements, and he'd discovered something troubling. Nathan was in deep financial trouble. His debts were piling up, and he was sinking fast. The house was his last hope. If I sold it, he could wipe away his debts, live comfortably, and leave me with nothing but a memory. That was his plan. I wasn't going to let that happen. We kept in contact, coordinating every move. Sarah came over one afternoon to go through the final details of the wiring. We found more than I expected, additional speakers that Nathan had hidden in the attic. He hadn't just been planting them in the walls. He'd gone further, embedding them in the very structure of the house. It was as if he'd tried to make the house itself turn against me. "You sure you're okay with this?" Sarah asked, looking at the mess of wires and speakers that we were tearing apart. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Every inch of the house felt like it was betraying me, and every moment I spent looking at the wiring made me feel like I was uncovering pieces of my life, ripped apart and scattered across the floor. "I said I'll be fine," I said, finally. But I said I'm not done yet. Sarah didn't press me. She knew what I was planning. She knew that once I had the proof, once Nathan saw what I knew, everything would change. The truth would come out, and Nathan's game would be over. The hardest part was making sure Nathan didn't know I had the upper hand. I had to make him think he was still in control. I kept letting him believe I was close to selling, even as I pulled further away from the idea. I made calls to appraisers, even though I had no intention of selling. He was starting to grow nervous. I could see it in the way he looked at me, the way his hands fidgeted when we spoke about the house. Every time I mentioned the idea of selling, he became more frantic. He was running out of time. The deeper I dug into his lies, the more desperate he became. And that desperation was my advantage. He thought I was folding. He thought he'd won. But I wasn't just playing the confused father anymore. I was playing the long game. I needed him to make the next move. I needed him to reveal more of his hand. And so I kept playing along. But every time he pushed, every time he tried to force me into a decision, I pushed back a little harder. I started mentioning the debts he'd racked up, the money he owed. "You sure you'll be able to manage all that, Nathan? I mean, you've really been struggling lately, haven't you?" The look on his face was priceless. He hadn't expected me to catch on to his financial troubles, but I could see the panic in his eyes as he tried to deflect. "Dad, please don't have to worry about that," he said quickly, his voice shaking just slightly. "We such'll figure it out. Just let me handle it. Selling the house will solve everything." He was starting to unravel, just as I'd hoped. But I had to be careful. I had to make sure I wasn't the one who came off looking like the villain. It was all coming together. The house, my legacy, my life's work, it was all on the line. But I wasn't going to let Nathan take it from me. Not without a fight. And once the moment came, once I had everything I needed, I would strike. And when I did, Nathan would have nowhere to hide. The trap was set. Nathan didn't know it yet, but every word he spoke, every move he made, was pushing him closer to the moment when everything would fall apart. I had made him think I was wavering, that I was ready to give in, but I wasn't. I had no intention of selling the house. I wasn't going to let him win. Not like this. Every time he called, I could feel the urgency in his voice. His words were becoming more desperate, his concern for me growing more insistent. "Dad, we need to make a decision. The house is too much for you. You've gotta sell." I played along as I had been. "I'm thinking about it, Nathan. I just need some time." I kept the conversation casual, like it was just another day, like nothing was wrong. But in the back of my mind, I was plotting, calculating every move. I had to make sure this was the perfect moment to expose him. I called an appraiser to give me a rough idea of the house's value, but I wasn't actually considering selling. It was just part of the act. Every time I spoke to Nathan, I'd mention the appraiser, the potential sale, just to keep him on edge. Every time he thought he was getting closer to the finish line, I made sure he stayed in the dark. Meanwhile, Brian and Sarah were working tirelessly to gather more evidence. I'd given Brian everything he needed: the phone records, the invoices, the footage of Nathan installing the speakers, and he was out in the field, following Nathan every day, documenting his every move. Nathan didn't know it, but he was being watched. Every call he made to the contractor, every meeting he had with the bank, everything was being recorded, and it was all coming together. I was about to have enough evidence to destroy him. Sarah came over one afternoon, her face grim. She stepped in inside the house again, poking around, making sure I didn't miss anything. "John," she said, her voice low, "I think we got him." I looked at her, not sure what she meant. "What do you mean?" She handed me a file, thick with paperwork. I went through the bank records. "Nathan's in deep, John. He's been using the house as collateral for loans. If you don't sell, he's going to lose it all. He's desperate. He thought you'd cave in and the house would be his." But if we don't act now, he's going to use that debt to justify taking it from you. My heart sank. I knew Nathan had been struggling, but I didn't know the extent of it. He'd sunk so deep that he was willing to risk everything. The house, his relationship with me, his future, all to get out from under his debt. But that's where his mistake lay. He underestimated me. I wasn't going to just hand him the house. He had already lost everything by betraying me. This house wasn't just a property, it was my legacy, and I would not let him destroy it. I made a call to my lawyer. It was time to set the wheels in motion. We needed to act fast. Nathan had no idea I was one step ahead, but that was about to change. The next day I played my part again. Nathan came over to check on me, his usual act of concern, but this time he seemed more agitated than ever. Dad, what steps going on? Are we going to sell this house or not? I looked at him, my expression cold, but I kept my voice steady. I've been thinking about it, Nathan. But it's such a big decision. I need to make sure I've been doing the right thing. He didn't stop like that. He could feel the walls closing in on him. Dad, you don't stop need to overthink it. You don't stop need all this space anymore. You stop not going to be able to handle the maintenance. You stop be much better off in a smaller place. Somewhere safe. I met his eyes, letting the silence hang between us for a moment. You know, Nathan, I said, letting my words sink in slowly, I've been doing some thinking too, about you, about everything. His eyes widened slightly, a flash of nervousness crossing his face. But he quickly masked it. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I leaned forward, my voice lower now. I know what you've been doing, the lies, the manipulation, the way you've tried to scare me into selling. You're the one who's been behind the haunting, Nathan. You've been planting speakers in the walls, working with a contractor to make it seem like I'm losing my mind. His face turned pale, but he tried to cover it with a smirk. You stir crazy, Dad. There's stuff's no way. I cut him off. I've got the evidence, Nathan. I've got the receipts, the phone records, the video footage. Everything you've done. And now I've done playing your game. I stood up, walking toward the desk where I'd laid out everything. I handed him the invoice for the speaker installation, the phone records, the footage of him setting up the equipment. You've been trying to make me sell. You've been trying to take everything from me. But I'm not giving it to you. Not now. Not ever. For the first time, he was speechless. His face twisted with panic as he glanced at the documents, the evidence staring him in the face. He knew it was over. The game was up.
You think you've won?
He sneered, trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. You set or nothing without me. This house, this family, none of it matters. I shook my head. No, Nathan, you've already lost. This house isn't just bricks and mortar. It's everything I've built, everything I've worked for. And now you've going to pay for what you've done. His face crumpled, and I knew then that he realized the full extent of his mistake. He thought he had all the power, all the control. But now I had it all. The truth had come out. And with it, everything he had worked for was slipping through his fingers. It was time to make him pay. It wasn't set over. Not by a long shot. I had dropped the bomb on Nathan, and the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. He was rattled, but I couldn't get comfortable just yet. The truth was out in the open, and now the real game was about to begin. The days that followed were a mix of confusion and quiet intensity. Nathan tried to play it cool, pretending like everything was fine, like I hadn't just caught him red-handed in the act of trying to rob me of everything I had worked for. But I could see the cracks in his mask, the nervous glances, the strained smiles. He was unraveling. He called me constantly, but I didn't pick up. He texted me, trying to sound like he was concerned, like he cared. Dad, we need to talk. Please, just listen to me. But I wasn't about to fall for it. Not anymore. I had every piece of the puzzle. The invoices, the receipts, the footage of him setting up the speakers. The evidence was irrefutable, but I needed more. I couldn't just let him walk away from this. He had crossed a line, and now it was time to make sure he paid for what he did. Brian had kept following him, collecting more evidence. Nathan was acting out of desperation now, making frantic calls to the bank, trying to cover up his tracks. The debts were piling up higher than I had ever imagined, but Nathan didn't know that I had everything. Everything I needed to make sure he couldn't wiggle out of this. He had manipulated me for so long, but now the tables had turned. I spent the next few days quietly preparing. I wasn't going to let him off easy. The phone calls grew more frequent. Dad, just hear me out, okay? I know things have gotten messed up, but I said I'm still your son. I said I'm sorry. I made a mistake. But his words were hollow. The apology didn't reach me. How could it? He had tried to destroy me, to break my trust in the one person who had always been there for him. There was no coming back from that. I reached out to my lawyer again, getting the legal ball rolling. I wasn't going to wait around while Nathan continued his little charade. It was time to take action. The longer I let him drag this out, the more he would try to wriggle free. The lawyer advised me to gather all the evidence and prepare for a possible legal battle. I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want this to go public. But if Nathan pushed me, I'd have no choice. He had already put me through enough. That was when I got the call. It wasn't from Nathan, though. It was from Sarah. John, I set been digging into Nathan Sepp's financials a bit more, she said, her voice tight. You need to see this. He Sepp's taken out more loans, and some of them are tied to the house. If we don't set act fast, he Sepp's going to try to sell it behind your back. I gripped the phone tighter. How much? How bad is it? Except it was bad. The bank Sepp's already been sending him notices. I Sepp's got copies of everything. They Sepp's got liens against the house. If we don't Sepp's to stop him, he Sepp's to use the house as leverage to get out of his mess. I felt the weight of it all crash down on me. I had been right to act fast. The house wasn't just his ticket out of debt. It was the last card he had to play. He thought he could manipulate me into selling it to save himself. But I wasn't going to let him do that, not without a fight. I looked around the house. My house? The place I had built with my own hands. It felt like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I'd been calm up until now. I'd played the role of the confused father, the one who wasn't sure what was real, what was right. But now I was going to take the gloves off. I called Nathan. He picked up on the first ring. Dad, I said sorry. I didn't set mean for any of this to happen. I didn't let him finish. Enough, Nathan, I've got the bank records. I know about your loans, your debts, the liens against the house. You're not getting away with this. You wanted me to sell? You're going to learn that this house isn't just a property, it's my life's work. You're not going to take it from me. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. For the first time, he was quiet. He didn't have anything to say. You think I suppa gonna just walk away from this? He finally spat. You don't understand, Dad. You never have. I sup am this close to losing everything. Do you really think I care about the house? I need the money. I took a breath, steadying myself. I sup not selling, Nathan. I sup not giving you what you want. This is my house, my legacy, and if I have to fight you to keep it, I will. And if you think you can just walk away from this without consequences, you sup dead wrong. His voice was filled with rage. You shall regret this, Dad. You shall regret everything. I hung up before he could say more. The time for words was over. He had crossed the line, and now I was going to make sure he paid. As I sat back, the weight of the situation settled over me. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. It was time to make Nathan face the truth, to make him see what he had done to destroy everything we had. And this time, he wasn't going to get away with it. The night was finally here. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. The house that had once felt like a home, my sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. I had spent days preparing, planning every detail, making sure every move I made would land with precision. Nathan thought he had it all under control, but tonight I was going to expose him for the fraud he was. The game was over. The dinner was set. It wasn't just any dinner. This was a stage, a place where everything would unfold. Friends, family, people Nathan thought he could manipulate were gathering. I could feel their eyes on me as they filed into the dining room, Everyone was pretending like it was just another night, just another meal. But I knew the truth. I knew what was coming. And tonight, everything would change. Nathan was there, sitting at the table with his girlfriend, trying so hard to maintain the appearance of calm. He was playing the role of the concerned son, the one who had been trying to help me, but his nervousness was beginning to show. His hands fidgeted, his smile didn't reach his eyes. He was unraveling, and I could feel it. I kept my composure, playing my part as well. I smiled, nodded, made small talk. The tension in the room was palpable, but no one could feel it more than I did. Every time Nathan glanced at me, his eyes betraying his fear, I could almost taste the victory. He had no idea what was coming. The dinner passed slowly, the clinking of glasses and the chatter of the guests filling the room, but my focus never wavered. I could feel the trap closing in on Nathan, each word I spoke drawing him further into the web. But I wasn't going to expose him just yet. I had to wait for the right moment. The tension had to rise, the silence had to become unbearable. I waited for the perfect moment. As dessert was being served, I stood up. The room fell quiet. I could see the nervous glances being exchanged. Everyone was waiting for me to speak, to say something. I had their attention. Nathan, I said calmly, my voice cutting through the silence. There's something I need to tell you. He froze. His fork hung in mid-air, and his eyes widened as he looked at me. For the first time all evening, I saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't pretending anymore. He knew what was coming. I've been listening to your lies long enough, I continued, letting the words sink in. I know what you've done. The room was still. You could have heard a pin drop. Nathan's face went pale as he tried to mask his panic with a weak smile. You are not going to get away with it, I said, my voice steady. I know about the speakers. I know about the lies. I know you've been manipulating me, trying to scare me into selling my house, trying to take everything I worked for. But tonight, Nathan, I done. I pulled the remote out of my pocket, the one I had been hiding all night, the one that would expose him for who he really was. The video started playing on the projector. The room fell into a stunned silence as Nathan's face appeared on the screen. The footage was clear. It showed him sneaking around the house, setting up the speakers behind the walls, the cold, calculated look on his face as he planted the devices, the whispers, the footsteps, the eerie sounds. It was all him, the haunting that had been plaguing me for months. It was nothing more than a scheme to force me to sell. I watched as Nathan's face drained of color, his confidence crumbling. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was trapped, and there was nowhere for him to hide. You thought you could manipulate me, didn't you? I said, my voice cold now. You thought you could get away with this. But you set wrong. The truth is out, Nathan. And now you set off to face the consequences. The room was silent, the shock hanging heavy in the air. Nathan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He tried to speak, tried to salvage whatever was left of his dignity, but there was nothing he could say. The evidence was irrefutable. The video played on, showing him setting up the equipment, making the house appear haunted. He had orchestrated this entire thing. You are a liar, Nathan, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You tried to use fear to steal my home, my legacy. You betrayed me, and now everyone here knows who you really are. I watched as the realization dawned on him. His mind was racing, his heart pounding, but he couldn't escape. His lies had caught up with him, and there was no way out. His girlfriend looked at him in disbelief, her face pale. She stood up, backing away from him. Nathan, what is this? What have you done? His mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes darted around the room, desperate for an escape, but there was no way out now. The truth had been exposed, and it was too late to change it. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me, but it was bittersweet. I had done what I had set out to do. The man who had been my son, the man I had trusted above all others, had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now he would pay the price for it. I should have known better, I said, my voice low, almost to myself. You didn't lose me, Nathan. You gave me away. Nathan stood there, his entire world collapsing around him. But I wasn't going to offer him any mercy. Not after everything he had done. Not after the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. The house was mine. My legacy was safe. But as I stood there staring at the wreckage of my son's life, I couldn't help but feel a lingering emptiness. I had won, but at what cost? The silence in the room was suffocating. Nathan stood frozen, his world crumbling in front of him. His eyes darted from one face to another, but no one spoke. The family that had once supported him, that had trusted him, now saw him for who he truly was. A liar, a manipulator, a man willing to tear his own father's life apart for a piece of the inheritance. I watched him standing there trying to pull himself together. But I knew it was over. There was no coming back from this. His mask had slipped, and now the truth was laid bare for everyone to see. His girlfriend, who had sat next to him just moments before, slowly backed away, shaking her head. Nathan, I can set believe this. How could you do this to your own father? Her voice was soft, but the words cut through the air like a knife. Nathan didn't say anything. He just stood there stunned, as if the weight of his own actions had finally hit him. Get out, Nathan, I said, my voice cold, unwavering. You've done enough. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could see it in his eyes. The desperation, the realization that everything he had worked for, everything he had planned, was slipping through his fingers. You think you can just lie and manipulate your way out of everything? I continued, my anger rising. You tried to take everything from me, Nathan. You betrayed me. And now you have to face the consequences. He staggered back, as if the weight of my words had physically knocked him off balance. Dad, please listen. I was wrong. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was trying to fix things. I was trying to make it all better. I shook my head. No, Nathan, you weren't trying to fix anything. You were trying to take. You tried to take what was mine, and you used me to do it. His eyes welled up, and for the first time I saw real regret. But it was too little, too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, and no apology could undo what he had done. The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Everyone was in shock. They had never seen Nathan like this before, but I had. I had seen it all, the lies, the manipulation, the coldness in his eyes when he thought he could get away with it. You consent, just walk away from this, I said, my voice steady, but with a hardness that matched the weight of the situation. You said done something unforgivable, and you said not going to just waltz out of here like nothing happened. I could feel the weight of their gazes on me. Some were sympathetic, some were disappointed, but most were just shocked. They were looking at Nathan as if they didn't recognize him anymore. And they didn't. The man they had known, the son I had raised, was gone. In his place was someone else, a stranger who had been willing to destroy his own family for his own selfish gain. Nathan's face twisted in a mix of shame and anger. You don't still understand, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I needed this. I couldn't just keep living like this. You never helped me, Dad. You never helped me, Dad. You never understood. All I wanted was a way out. I took a step toward him. My eyes locked on his. You want a way out? You want to escape your problems? Well, Yusef just made them worse. Yusef will have to face the consequences of your actions. You want Sef to get off so easy this time. He looked at me, his face full of frustration, but there was nothing he could say. The truth was undeniable. He had lost. I'd make sure of it, I added, my voice steady as I turned away. The house is safe. Yusef lost. And no matter what you try to do, Yusef or not getting it back. Nathan slumped into the chair behind him, his head in his hands. The reality of it all finally hit him. The lies, the manipulation, the debt, it had all caught up to him, and now there was no escape. As I watched him, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I had fought for what was mine, but at what cost? This was my son, the boy I had raised, the boy I had trusted with everything. But trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. The rest of the family began to leave, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. Some avoided Nathan's gaze, while others exchanged quiet words among themselves. No one was sure what to say. What could they say? Sarah stayed behind, her expression unreadable. You did what you had to do, John, she said quietly. He was going to take everything from you. He deserved this. I nodded, though I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. I had exposed Nathan. I had stopped him from taking my house, my legacy. But I had lost something too. A part of me, a part of our family, was gone. And no matter what happened next, I couldn't get it back. I know, I replied softly, but it doesn't make it any easier. Sarah didn't say anything else. She simply placed a hand on my shoulder, offering silent support, the kind of support I hadn't known I needed until it was there. Nathan was still sitting at the table, his head buried in his hands. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for him, but I quickly pushed it aside. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. The house was safe. My legacy was intact, but as I looked around at the empty room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been lost in the process. I had won, but I had also lost, and that was the part no one ever warned you about when you fought for justice. The days after Nathan's exposure were filled with a strange quiet. It was the kind of silence that follows a storm, heavy, lingering, and full of the aftermath. But even though the storm had passed, I knew the battle wasn't over. Not yet. The legal proceedings were inevitable. Nathan's debts, his manipulation, the fraud, everything was out in the open. I knew he would fight it. I knew he would try to spin the narrative in his favor, but I was ready. I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to back down. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about principle. It was about justice. Nathan had crossed a line that couldn't be erased. His betrayal had been so deep, so calculated, that I couldn't just let him walk away. I wasn't going to let him ruin my life and think he could get away with it. I sat in the lawyer's office, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Nathan's lawyer was a smooth talker, trying to negotiate a settlement, trying to downplay the severity of what Nathan had done. But I wasn't having it. Not after everything. There sips no settlement, Mr. Harris, I said, my voice steady, but with an edge. What Nathan did isn't something we can just sweep under the rug. It seps fraud. It seps emotional manipulation. He tried to take everything from me, and now he's going to face the consequences. The lawyer shifted in his seat, glancing at the paperwork in front of him. Mr. Parker Sips's financial situation is difficult. This isn't a simple case, you know. His debts? I'm aware of his debts. I cut him off. I'm aware of how deep he's in, but none of that changes the fact that he tried to use me, use my trust, to get what he wanted. He set me up to believe this house was haunted. He planted speakers in the walls. He manipulated me into thinking I was losing my mind. That's not something that can be overlooked. The lawyer nodded slowly. He could see that I wasn't backing down. He tried a different approach. What if we could arrange a financial settlement? Some form of restitution for the damage done? No, I said firmly. I said already made my decision. This isn't a set about money. This is about justice. Nathan doesn't get to walk away from this. The lawyer sighed, defeated. He knew he had no leverage. With the evidence I had, there was no way Nathan was going to win. The case was too clear-cut. It wasn't long before the trial date was set. Nathan's defense was flimsy at best. He tried to claim that he was only trying to help me, that the haunting was all a misunderstanding, but no one bought it. The footage, the phone records, the receipts, it was all irrefutable. Nathan had orchestrated this whole thing from the start. He had tried to force me out of my home, all to get his hands on the money. The trial was brief. The verdict, swift. Nathan was found guilty of fraud, emotional manipulation, and defamation. The court ordered him to pay restitution for the damage done, but more importantly, he was forced to face the consequences of his actions. His reputation was shattered. His debts were now his problem to solve, and his relationship with me, his father, was irreparably broken. I sat there in the courtroom, the weight of the moment settling on me. I had won, but it didn't feel like a victory. The house was mine, but the cost had been higher than I ever imagined. Nathan was gone, the family I once knew had disappeared, and the trust we had built over years was gone. What was left? Justice? Yes. But it didn't fill the emptiness I felt. I walked out of the courtroom, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The house was safe. My legacy was intact. But it felt hollow. What had I really won? I had exposed Nathan for what he was, but in the process I had lost something much more valuable, a son. I spent the next few days in a daze. The house that had once felt like home now felt different. The walls, once filled with the laughter of family, now seemed cold, distant. It was hard to walk through the rooms without feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I couldn't stop thinking about Nathan, about what he had become. He was gone now, and I knew he would never come back. He had burned every bridge, and there was no going back from this. But I still couldn't shake the question, was there anything left of the son I had raised? I tried to move forward. I focused on the house, on the work I had left to do, but every corner I turned, every room I stepped into, I felt his absence. The house was mine. My legacy was secure, but I had lost more than I ever thought I would. As I sat on the porch watching the sun set over the horizon, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Justice had been served, but at a price. You didn't us lose me, I thought, my mind drifting. You gave me away. And with that thought, I felt the weight of it all, heavy and final. Justice had been done, but it had cost me something I would never get back. The house is quiet now. The walls that once echoed with the sound of family, of laughter, of dreams, now stand still, almost haunting in their silence. It's strange. I always thought that when I got to this point, when I finally exposed Nathan for what he was, when I won, it would feel like a triumph, but it doesn't. It feels. I sit here in the living room, looking around at the same old furniture, the same old walls I built with my own two hands. Nothing's changed, yet everything has. The house feels different now. It's not just a home anymore, it's a reminder of everything that's been lost. I won. The house is mine, my legacy is intact. But what's it all worth when the person I fought for, the person I trusted most, has turned his back on me? Nathan, my son. The boy I raised, the boy I trusted, the boy I thought would one day carry on what I built. He's gone, and not just physically. He's gone in every way that matters. I thought I would feel relief when the verdict came down in court. I thought I would feel the weight lift off my shoulders. But all I feel is this strange, hollow emptiness. It's like I've won the battle but lost the war. The house is still here, but the family, the connection, the trust, I'll never get that back. I sit on the porch now, the sun setting behind me, the cool breeze brushing against my face. It's peaceful here, but it's not the peace I expected. The peace I thought I would feel once this was all over. I don't know what's left for me now. I've spent my life building this house, building a future for Nathan and me. But now it feels like that future was a lie. What was it all for? I keep asking myself that question, over and over. What was it all for? I didn't want to believe that Nathan was capable of something like this. I didn't want to believe that the son I raised, the boy I loved, would betray me like this. But I was wrong. He proved me wrong in the worst way possible. And now I'm left here alone with the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. The house is still here. My legacy is still intact. But I can't help but feel like I've lost something more important than all of that. I've lost the person I thought Nathan was. The boy who used to laugh and joke with me. The boy I used to trust. The boy I used to believe in. And now all I have left is the house. And even though it's mine, it feels like it belongs to someone else. Someone who isn't here anymore. I wonder if Nathan ever thinks about what he's done. Does he regret it? Does he understand the damage he's caused? I'll never know. He's gone. And with him, any chance of repairing what was broken. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever be the same again. Maybe I never was. Maybe this was always the way it was meant to be. Maybe I was always going to lose him. But even so, I can't help but wish things had turned out differently. I built this house with my own two hands. But it's not the house that feels like home anymore. It's just a shell. A reminder of what was lost. And as I sit here watching the sun set, I realize that the house doesn't mean anything without the people in it. But now, I am alone. And that's something no amount of bricks, wood, or steel can fix.